Hello and welcome to the EdjSports NFL Podcast on Monday morning. Today we'll be recapping the Week 13 action, and what a weekend it was. I am your host, Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst here at EdjSports, and joining me as always on Monday mornings is our VP of Data Science, Scott Brown. Scott, how was your weekend?
It was good, Ian. It was a pretty chill weekend for me, just kind of kicking back at home. Got to spend a little bit of time outside. It was unseasonably warm down here in Louisville, Kentucky. We're sort of battening up the hatches for a cold winter ahead. But it was nice and relaxing, and actually got to take in quite a few games this weekend. So definitely enjoyed it. How was your weekend?
It was good. You mentioned the unseasonably warm weather. Was able to get out for one last round of golf this year, I think, although I said that just a few weeks ago in the middle of November when it was about 70 degrees, and then got in on some home renovation, started some stuff there. So fun. A pretty busy weekend, and then Sunday, obviously, back to watching football, which is what I do all day Sunday. So like you said, got to see some of the games, so we've got a couple of exciting games we'll get to talk about here. Before we do, just want to remind you that all of our podcasts are available on the EdjSports Podcast Network. That is available on your preferred platform of choice, as well as our EdjSports YouTube channel, where you can see all of our podcasts, as well as our pregame matchup videos with betting insights for every game of every week. So please subscribe to any of those shows or any of the podcast platforms, as well as our EdjSports YouTube channel. Give us a 5-star review, help us grow our audience, and get this analysis and some pregame betting information out to even more people. And then on Wednesday, we'll also have an update to our coach rankings, where our Champion Gaming brand ambassador, Katie George, will be joining me to update our rankings and take a look at some of the decisions. Some of them will be ones we'll cover today. Some of the ones that we'll cover as far as good decisions, bad decisions, will be some that are kind of under the radar. We call our challenge flag portion, where we look at some questionable calls by coaches and give out our golden whistles, where we'll look at some of the best calls that might have been a little bit under the radar from the previous week's action. So now we'll just get into the weekend action. We had an exciting game in Detroit. If you don't know already, the Lions finally got their first win of the season after starting, 0-10-1, I believe, through 12 weeks. They had one tie there against Pittsburgh. Came down to the wire. Some big calls, big win probability swings. Dan Campbell had kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit as far as fourth down aggressiveness in the last few weeks, but got back to his roots the way he was early in the season. He came in ranked 29th in our head coach rankings and 21st in CCI. Something tells me he's going to be moving up probably quite a bit this week, at least in that CCI metric. His first good fourth down go happened early on in the game. First quarter, fifth best play call of the week. It was 10 minutes left, 4th and 1 on his own 41. Decides to go for it to still tie game. It was a 4% increase in pre-snap win probability. Really surprised, not surprising from him, but a lot of coaches you'll see early on choose to punt here. Just say, hey, let's just play it safe for now. But they were, and they didn't convert, but it was still the right call there, Scott.
Yeah, I like to see it. Setting the tone, one could say, in this one. We have him as 21 in our CCI, but yeah, I think he's ascending this week. It's good to see that when they got Goff back in the lineup, that Dan Campbell returns to being aggressive and being aggressive early on these fourth down decisions. Here we see him going for it on 4th and 1 with 10 minutes left. They are on their own 41, so I think as you indicated, many coaches would probably punt here this deep in their own territory, sort of just getting towards the middle of the field. But yeah, we really like it, and I think when you're a team that enters into a contest winless into Week 13, that you should be, what do you got to lose, right? Let's go for it here, and I think you're likely to, really find support on your sideline for making these decisions. And it's great to see Dan Campbell find the right one, and he wasn't done. So I think we can move on to talk about his next one.
Yeah, a little bit of foreshadowing there with Campbell going for it early on, didn't convert. Coming down late in the game, fourth quarter, the Vikings had started to make a comeback, or not started, they had made a comeback, missed a couple 2-point conversions that kept them from tying the game. But 4 minutes left, 4th and 1 on their own 28. Detroit again chose to go for it. This was an 18.9% increase in pre-snap win probability. Just a great decision here. And once again, Jared Goff, they did not convert. So this is one of those that we see a lot. The right decision to go for it, so directionally going for it versus kicking. but maybe not the best play call, especially with Jared Goff, who's thrown the ball away on fourth down multiple times this season.
Yeah.
Not necessarily his fault. There was a lot of pressure. I think it was they had a running back or a tight end maybe that leaked out into the flat on the right side that was covered pretty well. Supposed to be kind of a quick hitter and wasn't able to get it out there, but unfortunate result, but still the right call.
Yeah, it got blown up. I think the DN just penetrated straight into the backfield in some sort of like bootleg concept that the Lions were going for and just really shut it down. But once again, to sort of just isolate the decision here, really, really strong move here by Dan Campbell to go for it. Once again, I think you would find probably most coaches in the NFL be punting it here, right? Just sort of trusting the defense. In fact, I think I heard that on the broadcast, and of course I had one of the biggest eye rolls ever on my couch. But don't trust your defense. Trust your offense and give your team the best chance to win by going for it here, which they did. Wound up not working out. The execution was poor. That maybe the play call could have been better, but the actual decision to go for it was solid. Even being on their own 28-yard line, it really is the right thing to do and improve their win probability by close to 19%. So, strong move for Dan Campbell, and I think we're likely to, like I said before, likely to see him rise in the rankings when we release those later this week.
Yeah, and this is one I kind of outlined on Twitter as best I could as this happened last night or yesterday afternoon, whenever it was at that point. But it's one of those situations where you go for it, or if you punt the ball, they get the ball, Minnesota gets the ball with 4 minutes left. If they're going to score a field goal or a touchdown, they're going to use pretty much all of that clock. They're going to intentionally do that as well,
right.
Try and get down the field quickly, but not too quickly. They want to get it in field goal range, at least to get a score. But then there's no time left for you. If you don't get it, like they did here, like they failed, they're already in field goal range. If you're going to stop them, you get the 2-minute warning that Detroit still had, I think, one timeout in this scenario. So they do have a chance to stop the clock at least a little bit. Minnesota's got all three, so it's like if they're going to score, it's going to be quickly.
Yeah.
You're still going to have time, and that's what happened.
That's a great point. You sort of force the issue, and by doing so, you get to kind of you sort of get feedback quicker, information back quicker, and actually leave yourself some time to recover in the event that they go down and kick a field goal or that they convert a field goal off of your failed fourth down attempt. So, I think, we're always trying to consider and think about, how can we, if we don't get the best outcome from our decision, how can we still recover when it goes bad? And I think this is a good instance of that where, you go for it and you fail. Well, they're already in field goal range. There's less situations where Minnesota can absolutely just burn all the clock down in the process of moving down the field and then sort of break your back in the last seconds by kicking, a chip shot field goal to win it. So, yeah, you sort of limit how much damage they can do to the clock on you, and regardless of what happens, you still sort of give yourself some kind of shot. And we saw Minnesota in this case actually really do the best they could. They maximize their ensuing opportunity, which we can talk about now.
Yeah, and they got down. Minnesota was close to running out the clock, maybe not all the way, but they got down. It was 3rd and 2 at the 11 with 2:48 left. They get the first down. It's a 1st and goal. They get the first and goal, and you almost wonder if Detroit should let them score. I know the broadcast mentioned that. They get the 2nd and goal. They don't get it. And then it was actually kind of surprising to me that they chose to pass the ball instead of just running down the clock and kicking a field goal, with – at that point, 3rd and goal, it ended with 1:50. They can take that down, kick the field goal, and give Detroit only 1:05 left maybe. After that, only needing a field goal, though. So, interestingly played by Minnesota. I mean, I think against that Detroit team, too, you want to make it harder on them, which is probably what Zimmer was thinking. If we can score, we're close. If we can score here, we have to or it'll give us a better chance to win because it's Detroit.
Yep.
But I wonder, too, if it came down, that was 3rd and goal they scored. If it gets to a 4th and goal at the 3 or less, I'm going to say that we're going to say they should go for it. And I wonder what Zimmer would have done.
That field goal unit's coming onto the field. But, I totally agree. I think, I like the aggressiveness and like the aggressive play call. I think after the Vikings converted on that 3rd down and scored a touchdown, they had to have felt really good, and I think rightfully so. Of course, not all. Don't count your eggs before they hatch, right? It was. This one ended in a crazy fashion, and yeah, it was. I don't know. I was rooting for the Lions in this one, and so it was a fun sort of ending to talk about.
Interestingly, too, we'll kind of get to this later as well. 2-point conversions. Minnesota, I think, was 0 for 3 yesterday on 2-point conversions. They went for the one. What was it, early on in the third quarter? Failed the 2-point conversion. They were trying to tie it up, or trying to get to 17 to get within 3. Then they went for the touchdown, try and tie it up at 23. So you would think that they would get that, be close to about 50%. Like I said, again, foreshadowing a conversation we'll have here in just a little bit. But to go 0 for 3 is just kind of I don't know if I'd call it an anomaly, but at the same time, you would expect they would get at least one of those 3 at that point. So just another kind of interesting note, or a little tidbit from that they failed all 3 of those. But the decision by Dan Campbell, again, 18.9%, ends up being the 4th best 4th down go of the entire season at 18.9%, just behind Brandon Staley, Matt LaFleur, and Brian Flores this year. So really good call by Dan Campbell, who said we've seen him do it pretty much all year. The last couple of weeks were a little bit down for him, but really good. And then that 4th down play also ends up being our 4th most impactful play of the week based on the result. We'll mention he dropped back to pass, he sacked, he fumbled. The Vikings recovered it. The turnover really, the fumble isn't that big of a deal because it was 4th down. They didn't convert it. They're pretty much the same spot anyway. But that was a 25.3% decrease in win probability. Again, 4th most impactful play of the week. And then the Lions, of course, we said they went down to win the game. Ended up being the most impactful play of the week. 4 seconds left. 4th and 2 on the Minnesota 11. Jared Goff completes a pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown in the end zone. I think they said it was his first career NFL touchdown, which is a good one to have at home. Kind of wondering what the Minnesota defense was doing. They gave about, I think the cornerback safeties, were about 5 yards deep in the end zone, and St. Brown just kind of got to a couple yards in and turned around. But just a really good pass from Goff. St. Brown makes the catch. It's an 80.2% increase in win probability, the 3rd highest of the season, and the highest non-kicking play behind only Justin Tucker's 66-yarder against the Lions and Greg Joseph's miss for Minnesota against Arizona. So both of these teams involved in the 2 biggest kicking plays, both negative for them, but Detroit comes out on top in this one. Again, 80.2% was the most impactful play of the week. Moving on to another exciting game, very competitive game, the AFC North rivalry, intense rivalry between the Ravens and Steelers. The coaching matchup was not one of the best. John Harbaugh consistently top 10 in our head coach rankings. He was 6th coming into this week. Tomlin just slipped from 31st to 32nd to dead last. Really not a surprise, and saw more of the same in this one. Another bad call. Fourth worst call of the week. It was 3rd quarter, 3:47 left. Had 4th and 4 at the Baltimore 49, down only 7. Chose to punt instead of going for it. Was a 3.2% error. Just kind of more of the same from Tomlin here. Yeah,
on brand, right? I don't really know what to say at this point. Kind of, just not surprised. 4th and 4 from the 49. You're really at a point in the field where it's just not that great. The options are just not that great, and you really, in order to give yourself the best chance to win, need to be aggressive here, especially when you're trailing by a touchdown. Close to 3/4 of the game are almost over, so you really have to start making things happening. I think the Steelers were very fortunate to keep Baltimore to as few points as they did. But you can't kind of count on that forever or always being the case, right? And so every time you give the ball back, you can't just assume your next possession is going to take place with the score being held fixed, right? And
especially against that Baltimore team, as much as they struggled and have struggled this year, with Lamar Jackson, you can't count on them all. They're going to have their big plays when, just kind of when you least expect it, it seems like.
Yeah, big plays. You can't keep the lid on them forever, right? And with Hollywood Brown and that deep passing game, and then obviously Lamar making things happen with his legs, you really can't count on that. It only takes one really big play to really swing that game. So, yeah, we don't like the decision. No surprise here, and really no surprise that Mike Tomlin's the one making it. But we'll I guess move on to the next one, because I think we've sort of lost any expectation that Tomlin's going to see the light on these ones.
Yeah, and the team bailed him out getting into the 4th quarter. Only a minute 52 left. It was the 5th most impactful play of the week. 3rd and goal at the 5. Roethlisberger completes a pass to Deontay Johnson for the touchdown. So this one, the Steelers were down 1 at this point. I think Boswell missed the extra point the last time when they scored. So this one, basically, the game winner. At the time, it was the go-ahead touchdown. But Roethlisberger hits Deontay Johnson. A great call. Johnson came in from the left like he was running a slant, hard stop, and just turned back towards the sideline. And pretty easily, Roethlisberger makes the throw after Deontay Johnson dropped what should have been a touchdown there at the end of the first half, making up for it with his second touchdown here. Had two of them in this game here in the fourth. I think both of them came in the fourth quarter. So big play there, 23.5% increase in win probability. Again, that is the fifth most impactful play of the week. They got the 2-point conversion, took the lead 20-13. So Baltimore needs a touchdown and an extra point to tie, or a 2-point conversion to try and win this game, which is what they went for. It ended up being, we'll give you the result first, and then we'll kind of get into the decision because this was our third most impactful play of the week. So this is just looking at pre-snap win probability to post-snap win probability. The 2-point conversion was a pass from Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews just off his fingertips, really just a couple more inches towards Andrews. He makes this catch and is in, and the Ravens win the game. But they didn't, obviously. 37.1% decrease in win probability. But the decision itself is a very interesting one. Not only looking at the numbers, we talked a lot about this before we even jumped on the air here, but the kind of the aspect, the parts that the models cannot account for, which John Harbaugh mentioned in the post-game press conference. So why don't you walk us through this one? I know there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, and there was definitely some disagreement about this one online, and I think understandably so. And we even saw it in that post-game news conference. You had Harbaugh, indicate that he, a big factor influencing his decision was the depth in their defensive secondary. So the Ravens suffered a whole bunch of injuries to that secondary. I think Marlon, Humphrey, they suspect he's out for the season now. He suffered a shoulder or a pectoral injury on the Steelers' final drive. So they sort of knew on that sideline that they were really thin at that position and likely their chances in overtime were going to take a hit if they had to send their defense out there. So I think this is a very valid way to think about, or that's very valid information to factor in when making this decision, right? Basically, what that means is, Baltimore, who's a pretty healthy pregame favorite. I think by in the market they were about a 4-point favorite, if I'm not mistaken. So you can think about them as being about a 60-40 or 60, close to a 65-35 favorite pregame. And in overtime, we would expect them to still be a favorite, right? Maybe it's closer to like 55% or something like that. So in general, when you're the favorite at making these 2-point decisions at the end of the game, it's better for you to go to overtime because you're a favorite in overtime, and you might not necessarily be a favorite to convert the 2-point conversion. In fact, I think historical conversion rates for 2-point conversions are close to like 47 or 48% from the 2-yard line. So in general, and with Justin Tucker back there kicking extra points, they're almost automatic. So in general, I think Harbaugh recognizes this, and you'll notice that in his press conference, he didn't come out outright and say, "Oh, this was just absolutely the best decision to make, indiscriminately, always the right thing to do." Because it's not. I really don't think it is.
That's a good point too. I'm actually kind of interested. We know Baltimore has they're a big analytics group. We know some of those guys up there. Interested to see what their numbers were on this one. I don't know if they'll ever come out and say it, but if they actually had this as an extra point, and Harbaugh, in communication saying, "Man, our defense is banged up. I don't know if we can do it. I'm gonna go for it." So just a kind of a side note that would be interesting to know how they had it within their organization.
Totally agree. It would be really fascinating to be kind of a fly on the wall, on a Monday morning conversation, or even on the headsets while the decision was being made. But yeah, I think from the angle that and the way that Harbaugh's thinking about it, totally, I think we think he's thinking about it the right way, and factoring in the right pieces of information to make this call. I think it's it really is something. And so I think in that same sort of post-game press conference, Mike Tomlin took the stand and said something that I thought was very amusing and also on brand. He made a comment about how the Ravens, we kind of know who they are. They rely heavily on analytics, and they're predictable in that way. I think the exact quote was, they aggressively play analytics, and from that standpoint, they are predictable. No, I mean, I think that's really telling, right? How Mike Tomlin, I think, just misperceives or doesn't understand what analytics is and how it helps you make these decisions.
And I don't think they're as predictable as he thought, because it's funny, I saw a quote in a different article from Cameron Hayward saying he came off the field after the touchdown, not expecting them to go for it, and they called a timeout, which helped him to get kind of a breather and helped him to talk through it, because I don't think they were really expecting it either, to be honest.
Right, and once again, it's because it's not indiscriminately the right call to always go for two in these situations. If you're the favorite, it's likely not going to be the right thing to do. Completely different story if you're an underdog, and completely different story if you're a huge underdog, right? So say you were like a 2-score underdog heading into this one, and you found yourself in the Ravens' shoes on this 2-point or this PAT decision. It would probably be a slam dunk to go for two, right? Because this is your best chance to win the game. When the game goes to overtime, you're actually worse off, right? When you basically have the final say on, when you can decide the game on the single play and it's with your offense, even if you convert at low 40s or high 30s or something like that, that's going to probably be better for you than if you're like a massive underdog in overtime. So.
The example I always think of from there is being a Packers fan, the divisional game against Arizona in the playoffs a few years back, where Green Bay scored on the Hail Mary, chose to kick the extra point instead of going for two, and then they get those 70, 80-something yard pass to Larry Fitzgerald down to like the 5-yard line. Didn't even stand a chance in overtime. And to your point, you're a big underdog. Your chances are better on that one play than they are not getting the coin flip and then having to stop them or even scoring as an underdog.
Absolutely. So, I think it was definitely very interesting for multiple reasons. Lots of layers to this one. I think from the coaches and on the opposite sidelines and how they're thinking about analytics and in the context of making these decisions. Also, I think the reaction online and sort of obviously our place in that conversation and just sort of seeing the different arguments be made and sort of different numbers be put out there. But yeah, I think in general we're on the side of. We usually think that it's the right thing to do to just kick the extra point in the Ravens' shoes. We think that in general that they have better chances in overtime than they do by just going for two straight away right here. However, I think once you start to factor in things that are very difficult for the models to factor in, like Harbaugh was talking about, we can be swayed and we can come around and understand the reasoning behind the decision that they came to and support it ultimately. I think if you can support it on the grounds that it really tanked their chances of winning in overtime, then yeah, it makes total sense. So definitely a very fascinating one. We don't always get sort of polarizing calls that come up like this every week, but in week 13 here in this divisional game between Baltimore and Pittsburgh, we were definitely treated to one, and it's definitely fun to discuss and on like a Monday morning kind of talking around the cooler sort of situation. I'm sure there's lots of interesting discussion going on around the country between fans of the game, and it's fun to take part in.
And it came down after that. Obviously, only 12 seconds left. Came down to an onside kick, which the Steelers recovered. It was a pretty cool onside kick from Justin Tucker, the kicker, where he kind of like stepped over it like he was going to go one way and kind of brought his leg behind his other leg to kick. It ended up being a pretty good onside kick. The Pittsburgh defender just kind of dove forward about a yard short of that 10-yard mark to recover it. But yeah, really wasn't much of a chance there. I think it dropped Baltimore down pretty low to only below 2-3% really. Even if that, down one needing to recover an onside kick and score to win that game. So, yeah, really awesome ending, both of those games. We had quite a few good games this week in the NFL. And now that we've got those biggest storylines out of the way, we're going to move on to our top fives like we do every week, starting with the most impactful plays, which are just the biggest win probability swings. We've already covered 4 of the 5 between those two games. So we'll probably, move pretty quickly through these. Number 5 was that Roethlisberger touchdown to Deontay Johnson that gave the Pittsburgh Steelers the lead, ended up being the game-winning touchdown. Was worth 23.5% in win probability, taking them up to almost 80% at that point with only a minute 52 left. Number 4 was the 4th down for Detroit, 4th and 1 at their own 28, where Jared Goff was sacked and fumbled. They did not convert the 4th down. It was 25.5% win probability decrease. That failed 2-point conversion we just talked about was minus 37.1. Number 2 is one we didn't talk about. This one was a backbreaker for the Bengals. They were down big early. They were able to make a comeback, missed the 2-point conversion when they went to tie the game. But it was 24-22. They're down 2 early in the fourth quarter, just under 14 minutes left. Driving down 2nd and 2 at the Chargers 34, at least in field goal range at this point. Long field goal, but in field goal range, looking for more to get a touchdown there. Joe Mixon rushes to the right, fumbles. I couldn't really tell if the ball got hit or if it was just the way he moved. It just kind of squirted out. But Los Angeles picked it up and took it all the way back for a touchdown, putting them up 30-22 at that point. And, really essentially ending their comeback effort there for Cincinnati.
Yeah, big swings in this one. And, the Bengals came roaring back from a huge early deficit and, had a chance to tie it up with that, failed 2-point conversion. But, this play just sort of was the nail in their coffin, and the Chargers never looked back. They wound up winning this one pretty handily, I think.
They did, yeah. I think ended up with 41 points maybe. So a big win for the Chargers in a game where they started off hot. Then they looked pretty bad, and then they closed it out late thanks to some mistakes from Cincinnati. But that scoop and score for the Los Angeles cost the Bengals 37.5% win probability. The Bengals were actually favorites at that point at 54.3% prior to that play. Drop them all the way down to 17%. So huge loss there for the Bengals on that one. And then number 1, the touchdown for the Lions to win the game as time expired, 80.2% increase in pre-snap, or 80.2% increase in win probability. Again, the biggest non-kicking win probability swing of the season and 3rd biggest overall. So Detroit just 1-5, win 1 in 5 games for that play, and they got the 1 out of the 5 and only needed 1. So you only get 1 chance. You don't get 5 chances in the NFL or almost any sport. So they were able to make it work there at the end. So now that we've gotten the top 5 most impactful plays out of the way, we'll move on to the top 5 best decisions. So best 4th down decisions by coaches. Before we do, again, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to all of our Edge Sports shows on the Edge Sports Podcast Network, as well as our Edge Sports YouTube channel. That's EdjSports. So the top 5 best decisions, going to start with number 5, which we also covered just a few minutes ago. The Detroit Lions, a 4th and 1 at their own 41 early in the first quarter, only 10 minutes left. Jared Goff wasn't able to convert, but the decision to go for it was correct by our model's numbers, a 4% increase in pre-snap win probability. Already pretty big underdogs in this one at that point. They're down close to 37% to win early on. Number 4, Broncos and Chiefs. So this was an interesting sequence. This was the first of 3 4th downs in a row where Denver went for it. This was 6:28 left in the second quarter. Broncos are only down 10-3, 4th and 1 at the Kansas City 46. Vic Fangio chose to go for it. Was a 4.4% increase in pre-snap win probability. Ended up not getting it, they did get this one. So a very good call. Ended up just a few plays later, had 4th and 7. Chose to go for it. We agreed with that one. It's not in the top 5, but was around, I think, 2%. And then they had a 4th and 2 at the 8 with only 1:12 left in the half. Chose to go for it again instead of taking the short field goal, and we agreed with that one as well. Came out as the number 7 best 4th down call of the week at 3.6% pre-snap win probability. So Vic Fangio, someone who we don't often see be this aggressive. What do you make of that from him this week?
I'm surprised. I'm genuinely surprised. Happy to see it though, and I think independent of just like the play level aspects to these decisions are who's your opponent and what's sort of like the scoreboard situation, and you're going to be a dog when you're looking across the way at Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the rest of the Kansas City Chiefs. So take your shot, right, and be aggressive. They were down early, or down at this point in the game 10-3, so you're already a big dog pregame. Now you actually have played a full quarter or quarter and a half, and now you're actually trailing a full touchdown. You can't. Things are not going to turn out well by always settling for field goals. So I think we definitely support the decision to be aggressive here. This one was a slam dunk, being 4th and 1, but you highlighted some of the others that they made in sequence that were a little bit further, in terms of yardage needed to convert. And we agreed with all those. So I think, definitely passing with flying colors. Vic Fangio yesterday, in this game against the Chiefs, even though they couldn't pull out the win. It's good to see, coaches, using their brains, like thinking through how they can really seek out some edges for their team, and not just sort of, have it in cruise control and do sort of the classic old man football sort of things, So yeah, credit to Vic Fangio. I think he really gave his team the best chance on those plays that you highlighted.
Yeah, and the Chiefs got the ball in the second half too, so this was bigger. Even if you get the field goal there, it's 10-6. If the Chiefs go down and get a field goal, you're down 70. And if they get a touchdown, you're down even more. So taking advantage, again, of 4th and 2 is definitely the right decision. Again, that one was just outside the top 5. Yeah, this 4th and 1 is pretty much a no-brainer there. Number 3, Robert Saleh, 4th and goal at the 1 for the Jets against Philadelphia, trailing by 2. They had a new kicker this week who missed both of his first 2 extra points in the NFL. Yeah. Tough to see. But this one was good for the Jets. Zach Wilson, they went for it, increased their pre-snap win probability by 4.9%, and the Jets were able to get a touchdown here.
Yeah, this one was early in the first, so 9:26 remaining in the first. 4th and 1 from the 1. And Robert Saleh has had definitely a checkered past with his play call, his 4th down play calls. I think we were talking before recording about that Tennessee game earlier on in the season where he had a 3rd and 1 from the goal line, in a goal line situation where he wound up where Zach Wilson wound up taking a sack or sort of like rolling out of bounds to lose 2 yards and then kicking a field goal on fourth and goal from the 3. We didn't like that one, even though obviously the play was a horrible outcome to set that one up. We still didn't like the 4th down play call independent of that. But here he's sort of able to redeem himself, and I think credit to him. It's early in this one, so they hadn't exactly seen how rough of a day their kicker was going to have. Yeah. Maybe they suspected it, or he was trying to get out ahead of it a bit. Although you would expect just about anybody who's a kicker in the NFL could make a 19-yard field goal.
Right.
But nonetheless, yeah, really the right move to go for it here. We sort of think this is a no-brainer, but not everyone does. Robert Saleh able to find the right play call here. It's just anytime you're 4th and 1 from the 1 yard line, it's just so valuable to be able to realize touchdown equity instead of always settling for 3. It doesn't hurt that they're down 14-12 here. So really, and it's early in the game, so you want to realize all the points you can. And good decision, good process, and wound up being a good outcome as well as they passed for a 1-yard touchdown to Ryan Griffin.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Tennessee game where Saleh said he would have gone for it on 4th and goal. That was in overtime, too, the opening possession. So good to see he got another opportunity, 4th and goal at the 1, and nailed it this time.
Kept him honest, yeah.
Moving on, number 2, Kyle Shanahan for the 49ers. This one early a little over midway through the first quarter, but very early in the game. Tied at 7, 4th and 1 at the Seattle 45. This one's really kind of a no-brainer. San Francisco loves to run the ball. And this one, I think it was a quarterback sneak. Garoppolo picked up the 1 yard. It was good for a 5.2% increase in pre-snap win probability. So a good decision there by Shanahan. Really not much more to say about this one.
Yeah, and one minor thing to add, we don't take into account, or there's no way for us to know whether or not a 4th and 1 is a true 4th and 1 or a 4th and inches. And when you kind of factor in that this one was a 4th and inches, as they were able to sneak it for a first down, just makes it an even more firm, solid go for it play call. So it's 5.2%, just as a 4th and 1, so it's likely to be even slightly higher once you factor in that it's inches. So yeah, definitely the right move by Shanahan, and Garoppolo was able to pick it up with ease.
And that was 49ers, number 2 at 5.2%. And as we already talked through, we won't talk through number 1 much more. Takes the cake as number 1 here and number 4 on the season. Dan Campbell, 4th and 1 at his own 28. 4 minutes left, leading by 2, chose to go for it. Didn't work out, but the process was right. He made the right call. Ended up being a 18.9% increase in pre-snap win probability for Detroit, who was able to have that miraculous comeback and win the game. So really good call by Dan Campbell. Expect him to move up in our coach rankings, as well as that CCI metric. We'll be surprised if he moves up quite a bit there. Before we move on to the top 5 worst play calls or 4th down decisions, one more time, just want to remind you about our site, our new app that we brought out for 2021, where you can get NFL news and pregame betting analysis for every game, get fair value spreads, fair value totals, which are basically just our projections for where the spread and total should be for the games. You can compare those to the market and see if there's any value in any games. We highlight those as well in our pregame matchup videos that we have for every game as well. So, Scott, now that the good decisions are out of the way, we'll move on and wrap up the weekend review with the top 5 worst fourth down calls of the week. Number 5 was Giants and Dolphins. Joe Judge, who is not really new to this list at all. It's not a surprise to see him on this list. Only at number 5 this week. I think part of the reason is because Mike Glennon was in at quarterback. So it takes a little bit of hit in our customizations because we do customize for offense, defense, kickers, and quarterbacks are swapped in and out whenever there's a change. But still, 4th and 2 at the Miami 46. You're down 4 in the third quarter. There's not much to gain from a punt. Ends up being a touchback anyway. So they gain 26 yards of field position, which is not worth the 2.6% they gave up by not going for it.
Yeah, we hate these decisions. Once again, not necessarily surprised, and I suppose you could, in order to sway me around to punting on this decision, you have to really have a poor offense, and I guess
the Giants kind of do.
The Giants kind of do, and yesterday was especially rough. As I think Glennon suffered a concussion in the game, if I'm not mistaken, and they were already without their primary quarterback, Daniel Jones. So, don't like it. I mean, it winds up being a 2.6% GWC error, so it's a marginal one. It's certainly a marginal one, but one that as you find your team, trailing 10-6 at this point in the part of the field. You in general would like to see teams go for it here, and the only sort of counter to that is, man, your offense has to be really stinking it up in order to really justify punting here. So, not much to really break down about this one. We generally don't like it, and we think the decision holds up even across a lot of scrutiny, right? So even when your team is really bad, like even really bad NFL offenses convert enough where going for it's the right move. There's sort of a nice floor on these decisions, we think this one stands up, unfortunately, Joe Judge, we're gonna have to dock you on this one.
And you mentioned it being kind of a small error, 2.6. 4 of the top 5 are below 3.5. So again, not a great week for the bad decisions. They are still, we still disagree with them.
A great week for the bad decisions.
But not a great week for us as far as bad decisions. We're getting a lot to talk about, but all below 3.5. Still, we'll back them up. And we're not going to say, oh, maybe it's wrong.
Yeah, and credit in general across the league. I think coaches, it seems like the trend is that they're getting more aggressive and making better calls. So I think that's a general theme we've seen this year. And I don't think we get necessarily pleasure from just going off on these coaches, but we certainly have to call a spade when we see a bad call.
Yeah, and the trend is definitely up. You mentioned that. We had an interview that we did. Josh Dubois of the AP wrote about that using some of our data, and then just this morning in Peter King's Football Morning in America article, one of our co-founders and our chief information officer, Frank Frigo, gave some data there for a decision on Brandon Staley, who's been tops in the league so far. He tops our coach rankings. But Peter King writes a little bit about that using some of our data to analyze that and just kind of back up and see why some of those more controversial decisions these coaches are still going for, looking at that overall trend in the league. So a really cool article there, or piece of his article there to read that Frank Frigo is featured in as well. Number 4, 3, and 2 are all close to identical decisions, so we'll kind of lump these all together. Number 4 is Steelers-Ravens. Steelers down 7 with 3.5 left in the third. Number 3 is Raiders-Washington. Number 3 and 2 are Raiders down 7 to Washington. Number 3 is with 7:51 left in the second quarter. Number 2 is with 6:21 left in the first. In every scenario, they're down 4. It's a 4th and 4 or a 4th and 5 within 2 yards of the 50-yard line. So that midfield area, Pittsburgh was at the Baltimore 49, Las Vegas was at the Washington 48, and the Las Vegas 48. So there are errors of, interestingly, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. So all pretty close. Just those decisions where, you're near midfield, there's really not as much to be gained by punting, even though 2 of these punts, it looks like, actually both the Raiders punts ended up at the Washington 10 were fair catches. The other one for Tennessee was only to the Baltimore 24, it looks like. So not a great punt there. Yeah, I saw at midfield, kind of that fourth and medium range. You're expected to get that enough to make it worth going for that situation.
Yeah, and I think Bisaccia, so, the Raiders were featured here in number 3, number 2.
Bisaccia's dropped a lot in the last few weeks in our coach rankings.
He's I guess, not wanting to rock the boat and just being really conservative. I guess to be devil's advocate, he finds himself, I think, surprisingly, as the head coach of this Las Vegas Raiders team here in Week 13, Week 14. Certainly was not the case at the beginning of the season. And so, I think he's trying to find his way a little bit. I'm sure these calls probably didn't fall to him in the past. And so maybe it's just sort of wanting to not, stick out for the wrong reason, so to speak. When, I guess it really feels bad to go for these and not make it. But also what a really foregone opportunity to make a difference for your team, right? And, and this one, the Raiders, they have a good offense. I know, obviously they're without Ruggs now, but Derek Carr is a very competent, very skilled quarterback. Josh Jacobs in that run game has been very, very solid. He's good out of the backfield catching passes. So there's just I feel like a lot of things that they can do on fourth and medium here, these 4th and 4s, 4th and 5s. And especially for midfield when your alternatives are just not great. You're not in field goal range, and punting is it's sort of capped at how much you can swing field position. Yeah, just the right thing to do to go for it here, and so we don't like these calls.
Yeah, and against a Washington team that, don't look now, but they're only 2 games back of the Cowboys in the NFC East. They're in the 6th spot in the NFC. They still have 2 games against the Cowboys, 2 games against the Eagles, and a game against the Giants. So a pretty favorable schedule down the stretch for them, aside from those 2 against the Cowboys that are obviously going to be tough. They're a tough opponent. Really good team, but only 2 games back with 5 to go, and a good opportunity for them to repeat in the division. If they can keep it going, they've won, I think, 4 in a row now, Washington has. So coming on hot at the right time. And speaking of Washington, number 1, can't give them props on this one. Just kind of talking them up a little bit, but Ron Rivera coming down. This is one I have not necessarily a hard time getting on board with this. I understand it. I've seen it enough over the years being here and really understanding the numbers and why it is what it is. I think we had one of these a couple weeks ago that was like a 13% error in this situation because there's a little bit more time left.
Yeah.
But Washington down 1. They still have 2 timeouts left. Las Vegas only has 1. It's 4th and 1 at the Raiders 31 with 42 seconds left in the game. So a field goal puts them up 2 with probably 37. It ended up being 37 seconds left in the game. If you convert the first down here, you can run the clock all the way down for a field goal attempt where the Raiders don't even get a shot to answer.
Right.
You end the game with you run the clock down, a game-winning field goal as time expires. If you don't get it, the game's over. You have 2 timeouts, but you can't stop the clock enough to end the game.
And you get roasted by everybody in the entire world.
Exactly. So I understand Rivera not going for it. Like we said, I think every coach except Shanahan, who did this last year or 2 years ago against the Rams, ended up getting it and winning. There might have been a little bit more time left, but wins it. It's just 42 seconds left. What was it, like down to 31 seconds, I think we said before, is when it becomes a field goal.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm going to need you to talk through this one.
Yeah. So let me convert you here. I think, so what's going to happen here when the model runs this situation, when Washington decides to just kick the field goal, right? So they're it's not a longer field goal. It's a 49-yard field goal. So, with 42 seconds left, that's going to burn about 4 or 5 seconds off the clock as the ball, goes to the uprights. And, most of the time, what we think is going to happen and the ensuing kickoff is ball goes through the end zone, touchback, Raiders take over at the 25. That's not what happened in this situation, which is very important to note. But in general, we'll pause here for a second. I think most people have this sense that when you kick a field goal to take the lead here, the game's basically over, and it's absolutely not. We've seen this time and time again. These end of game drives by good quarterbacks, of which I think I'd include Derek Carr in the mix. He's maybe not Aaron Rodgers, he's maybe not Matt Stafford, or Mahomes, but he's certainly capable. 35-ish seconds or 40 seconds is a lot of time to work. They have a timeout. They're able to stop the clock by going out of bounds. There's just I know it didn't happen this time, but we've seen it plenty of times where good quarterbacks are able to lead their team down the field pretty methodically when they only need a field goal, and they're able to do it. They're able to pull it off.
I mean, it happened. Now that I think about it, happened to the Raiders last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick against the Dolphins. The Raiders got a field goal late, I think, and they went down and lost on a field goal.
Oh, I remember that. It was like a bomb.
The face mask, too.
The
Fitzpatrick got and still completed the pass. But so, I mean, they had it happen to them, and here they're trying to do it to Washington now.
I remember that one, yeah. And, to draw a parallel, I mean, Derek Carr came out in that first play from scrimmage, scrambled around a little bit there in the backfield there to buy some time in the pocket, and then just absolutely heaved a ball downfield. I don't know. It was like a Hail Mary. I don't know how far.
Zay Jones.
Yeah, and man, really close to. I thought it was, a somewhat of a close call. It could have been, pass interference. I suppose it would have been a little bit flag happy if they threw it, but
was almost caught too. I mean, it had a good chance to catch that ball.
Yeah, good. So I mean, yeah, there's just I think people generally underrate what good quarterbacks, good offenses can do in these situations. Even just above average offenses can do in these situations. And, our model is able to pick up on that. Our model is not able to pick up on sort of the social regret of trying something aggressive, failing, and then getting roasted by everybody in the world. So, from that standpoint, I would say I understand why this is our top air this week. It's a 6.5% air, so it's not it's not up there with the biggest airs, but I can totally understand where our model is coming from. It really assigns a whole lot of value to being the team that can run the last play in the game, and not allow your opponent to realize their equity. So, even when Washington does everything right, when they kick the field goal, it goes through the uprights, the Raiders still get to realize a whole bunch of equity most of the time. They're able to realize, close to a coin flip to win the game, to just have to go down and kick a field goal. That being said, a small detail but important one on this play is what happened on that kickoff. So I believe the kickoff occurred with 37 seconds left, and I don't even know who's kicking in Washington anymore. They've gone through so many guys.
No, Joey Sly's hurt. See, I'm not sure who it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it was. But man, that was really skillful what they were able to do with special teams there. So they were able, I think, kind of uppercut the kickoff, and so it was like a high looping kind of kickoff that landed right at the 1 yard line.
Well, Brian Johnson from New Orleans, who was kicking for them earlier this year.
Yeah, so basically, what my read on it was, he was able to kick it in such a way so that it wasn't going to just plow through the back of the end zone if it wasn't fielded. And so it really forced the return man into a tough spot. He had to field it, and then, he fielded it at the 1 yard line, had to return it. So, the issue there being that he had to run 5-6 seconds off the clock in order to return it. So 6 seconds when you're only starting with 37 is a huge deal. That could be, 1 or 2 plays.
Ended up being 4% in win probability, it looks like, here from the report.
Right, yeah. So the difference there between taking over with 31 seconds, which is what happened yesterday, versus taking over with 37, worth 4%, as you just said. So that's a huge detail, or an important detail, one that probably kind of goes overlooked, but one that we're able to pick up on, and is a nice little tidbit there that relates to the situation. So I mean, the field goal looks better if you're able to pull that off on a kickoff. The field goal with 42 seconds looks better. In general, though, we think that it's we stand by our analysis that it's that we like going for it here. We understand why coaches don't do it, but nonetheless, we still think it's the right call.
Yeah, not as big. So I definitely understand it. It is a tough one. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of pushback on this, like we always do, especially from those Raider fans who sometimes it seems like agree with us and sometimes they don't. Looks like we're already getting a whole lot of it here on Twitter anyway. Looks like some people perhaps agree, so not so sure we're getting as much negative feedback as we thought, but nonetheless, it is our error. 6.5% still, like you said, not the biggest we've seen. Probably doesn't even put it in the top 10 or 15 of the season. So we'll see. But Rivera, known for being, you mentioned Riverboat Ron, known for being pretty aggressive, or at least thought to be, and is kind of hit or miss anymore these days. So be interesting to see how he does kind of going forward, especially with him in the playoff hunt. If he'll be aggressive, or if he'll stick with kind of a conservative nature. But that'll do it for our top fives for this week. I just want to remind you that you can find all these on EdjSports.com and on our EdjSports app to go back and see the numbers on each of these top fives. We're going to now transition into a quick review or quick preview of the Monday Night Football between the Patriots and Bills. So a showdown in the AFC East. The Bills are 2-0 against the Patriots since Tom Brady left for warmer weather last year. They swept last year, got their first AFC East title since 1995. And with the Ravens' loss last night, the Patriots now have the number 1 seed in the East, have won 6 straight here, I believe. So looking really good. Only a half game ahead of the Bills, though, either a half or a full game. But it's very close there in the East. Buffalo is a 2.5-point favorite in the market. They rebounded last week after kind of stumbling for a few weeks. Looking at the rankings, coach rankings, Bill Belichick 15th, but he's near the bottom in our CCI as he has been the last few years. Sean McDermott 4th overall. So a little bit of a discrepancy here. How does Edge see this one? I mentioned the Bills are 2.5-point favorites in the market at home. So home field advantage has a little bit to do with that. Seems to me like it's probably more of an even split between these two teams.
Yeah, you're right on. Our model has it as Buffalo -1. I know that's seems like a bigger difference than it really is. Anything between that -1 to -2.5 range is pretty close. Once you sort of move over that 3-point hump is when you really start to see big differences result in the implied win probabilities for the two teams. So yeah, we're slightly more in favor of taking the Pats here in this one, but it's pretty close. We don't think there's a giant amount of edge to be had in this one by playing either side. Switching over, kind of transitioning over here to looking at the total. Market line sits about 41 points. We like the over in this one by just a hair. We think that the fair value should be closer to 43. I think anytime you see Buffalo in a game with with a 41-point total, it sort of makes you think, well, what the heck's going on? The Patriots definitely like to grind it out. They like to play it slow. That Belichick's pretty, I would say, old school, but also, I have to give him credit here. It gives his team the best chance to win. I don't think he wants to turn this one into a track meet, especially with the rookie quarterback back there and Mac Jones. Their offense has been pretty competent, but I think he's probably going to take that game management kind of style or approach into this one. But
also, these two defenses are the top 2 in the league in DVOA through 12 weeks. Now, the Bills just lost Tre'Davious White for the season too. I think it was a torn ACL, standout cornerback, but still 2 very good defenses as well, contributing, I think, to that lower total.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, but I actually didn't really notice that 41 points in a Buffalo game is very, very surprising, even given the good defense for New England. For that offense, though, hasn't been as good as it was last year, but still able to put up a lot of points. So.
Yeah, they're no stranger to 50-ish, 55-ish point totals. But once again, it takes 2 usually in those matchups, and they don't really have a dance partner in this one. I think New England, great defense, rookie quarterback, so they're going to be, I think, in clock management mode and going to try to grind it out. So we're likely to see lower number of points in this one. That being said, we do think there's a slight edge on the side of the over. Switching over and now transitioning to look at where the public money sits in this one, it's really, in terms of the number of bets being placed, really right down the middle. 51%, slight edge to New England, so the public's slightly more on New England in this one. And then when we look at the money, the money's actually closer to being in Buffalo's favor. It is in Buffalo's favor at about a rate of 59-41. So not a strong signal to be gleaned from this one, but we think that it looks like the sharps may be more on Buffalo, but once again, not really a very strong signal here. I wouldn't really take too much away from that. I think that pretty much covers it from our perspective on the analysis side and from the model's perspective on this one. Unfortunately, not really a whole lot of juicy options on the betting lines, but certainly likely to be a game worth tuning into, just as it's such a marquee matchup here between 2 really good teams on Monday night. So we'll be interested to check it out.
Yeah, and one interesting note, not sure how much it'll really play into this. It's only a few days, but Buffalo is coming off, has 11 days since their last game. They played on Thanksgiving night. New England played on Sunday last week. That was an early game, I believe. So still, over a week's rest for each. Pretty normal. No one going from a Sunday to a Thursday or anything here. So hopefully we'll be in for a really good matchup on Monday Night Football. Can't wait to see this one. So thank you all again for joining us here on Monday morning. Just a reminder, we are here every Monday, and then every Thursday you can catch me on the EdjSports Podcast Network with a betting preview for Thursday Night Football, as well as the weekend's action, picking out a few games that have some betting value, as well as some moneyline value picks. You can also find it on YouTube, on the EdjSports YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our shows, give us 5-star reviews. If you leave a comment, we'll read them on our next show. I'm not sure we've had many comments here lately. I know Matt hasn't really pulled any for us, so don't think we've really gotten any. But please, give us a 5-star review and leave us some comments. Give me anything you want. Doesn't even have to do with us or the podcast. Just whatever you'd like to put on there. And then don't forget about our site. Download our app for iOS and Android. You can get it no matter which of those you've got. You can get that. It's EdjSports. And be on the lookout for our updated coach rankings, again, coming out on Wednesday with our Champion Gaming brand ambassador, Katie George. And last but not least, Football Outsiders, our partners over at FO, are currently running a special for FO Plus that is just 99 cents a week for annual subscriptions. They can get betting information, daily fantasy, season-long fantasy. They've got rankings, just about anything you need. I use it all the time. I've mentioned it a couple times here, talking about DVOA for teams and how well they are or are not doing. Use it on all the pregame matchup videos that we do. So, again, be sure to check that out at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. Thank you, Scott. Enjoy the Monday Night Football and enjoy the Week 14 action.
Thanks, Ian. You too. See you next time.